Hey everybody, this is Don Newman, and this is Living a Life Worth Remembering. And this is the show that is dedicated to helping you and I learn how to live a life that will continue to live on even after our own lifetime has ended. As I start season 2, I'm so excited about the new opportunities that I'm going to have to not just share things that are on my heart, but to talk to other people that are living their own life worth remembering. They're making an impact. They're impacting destiny. And I'm so excited that this first episode of actually interviewing somebody and taking that content and sharing it with all of you starts with a very good friend of mine that I've come to know just this last year, but it seems like I've known him forever. My first guest that will be part of this show today that I'll be talking with is author and coach Randy Pippin, who is not only an author, but he's a football coach. He's done it for many, many years. He's currently the director of player relations at UAB, that's the University of Alabama, Birmingham, the Blazers. And he's written this book, which I helped him publish, Deep in the Heart. And I love what it says down here. It's daily documented devotions for your personal growth, inspired by Southern football history, death, burial, resurrection, return, and future. So if you like comeback stories, you're going to love this book. If you love Southern football, you're going to love this book. If you just want to hear great stories that are going to encourage you and also give you a whole bunch of keys of devotion to help you learn how to live a more victorious life, I think this book is just full of different things. It's one of the most unique books I've ever seen before. And when Randy first started talking to me about publishing this, I'd never seen a book that would have QR codes in it and would have interactive videos that both went to stories, videos, and to music. And so we worked really hard to get this together, to get all the links together. And so I'm just very excited about this book, but I'm so excited to have Coach Pippin on here. Coach, welcome to Living a Life Worth Remembering.
Hey, thanks, Don. It's great to be here. And no, you didn't just help me publish the book. You published the book, and I'm really appreciative of that and really honored to be here with you today.
That's awesome. So it looks like you're parked at a Sonic there.
Yeah, we're taking as is kind of our custom. We have a lot of family and friends throughout the South, and of course we live in Birmingham now, but my wife is originally from Cookeville, Tennessee, actually Sparta, Tennessee, which is where we're at the Sparta Sonic right now. So we're here and going to spend the day up here in Tennessee and see some of her folks, and weather's pretty, so we got a good day for it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Maybe we'll do a little advertisement for Sonic here.
Yeah, that's right.
Awesome. Well, Coach, I'm so glad you're on here. And I got to tell you, if you look at the side view of your book, this is what we call dog ear in a book. And your book has been dog eared by me at several places. And I've enjoyed not only talking to you about the stories, but I've loved reading it. And the thing I love about it, it's an easy book to read. It's not like you're going to get lost in one part, but there's several parts of the book. Why don't you share with everybody about the book and why you wrote it?
Okay. Well, it's really something that's been on my heart for a long time. I've kind of summed it up as a dynamic, faith-based 3D book. I say 3D because, as you know, it comes to life. And so I call it a 3D living book. It's inspired by Southern football history. And then where it says on the front, death, burial, resurrection, return, future, kind of tying in our UAB football program getting dropped and brought back, along with the story of Christ. And again, that kind of seems to go deep, but that's why it's called Deep in the Heart. And but I grew up in Texas, Don, as you know, playing football, and I often say it's not life and death where I was at. Football's not. It's more important than that, people say, and that's kind of the way I grew up. And it kind of always intrigued me as to why it was so important, why football was so important. And of course, having lived in Texas the whole time, I just thought maybe it was just Texas. And then I came to the South to play football in college, and kind of landed here, married a Tennessee girl, and started coaching in the South. And so come to find out that the passion for football runs really, really even deeper in the Deep South, particularly for college football. In Texas, it's of course the Dallas Cowboys, and then high school football is like the biggest thing going. And college football's big, but it's not as big as it is in the Deep South. And so it's kind of through the years, been coaching for 30 plus years, and it just always intrigued me. And I just had this desire to put together a faith-based book as we got into the UAB story 5 years ago. And we brought the program back from no players to 3 straight bowl games. It all seemed like it tied together real good. And so I just started documenting things.
That's awesome. I love the UAB story. And, I was familiar with the story before we had met, but listening to you talk about a program that basically was dead and came back to life. The history of Southern football is built around that story, but in the seat of everything, of course, is the message of Christ, but in the seat of that story is the UAB story. What, just briefly, I know you just hit on it, but briefly share about that UAB story and why you think it's important for people to know that story today.
Yes, sir. Well, of course, we're in Birmingham, and if you kind of look at things, Birmingham is kind of the epicenter of where what we're talking about transpires, where football is so important. It's the SEC headquarters, and the home of Legion Field, which is where we play, where the Iron Bowl originally was housed, and a lot of great games here in this city. And it's the number one. I don't think I put this in the book, but it's the number one college football viewing audience in the world, and it's on any given Saturday. It's a ridiculous number. I'm making the numbers up, but I mean, it's like around 80% of televisions in Birmingham, Alabama are tuned into college football. And the next closest one is like, Atlanta with 28% or something. And then it goes down, but it's just like the epicenter of where college football is important. So you got that piece of it. Then you got this college here. It's a major medical school, UAB is, but the program was started. And I go into great detail in the book about when it was started and how it was started and all that kind of stuff. And then it's been a very mediocre FBS Division I football program for a lot of years. Had a few, great things that happened, and then but a lot of 500 seasons or losing seasons, and sporadically would have a winning season. Like they beat LSU, back in Baton Rouge one time when Nick Saban was the head coach there. So there's been some things throughout the years that have been special, but for the most part, it's been kind of a middle of the road Division I football program. Well, Coach Clark came in 2014, and in the first year after they had only won, I think, 3 games in 2 years, they won 6 games, got bowl eligible in the 2014 season, and doubled attendance, and things were really trending in the right direction. And then at the end of the season, after beating Marshall, now I wasn't here at that time. I came when the program was reinstated, but they dropped the program and blamed it on various things. But the bottom line is they said no more football in December of 2014. Well, all the players scattered in the spring and went other places throughout the country. And then in June 2nd, I believe it was, 2015, because of all the uproar that was caused by dropping it and by the students and the campus and the community, they said, okay, we're going to give it another shot if you guys can raise the money and do it. And so that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Wow. And so the program not only was reinstated, but really and truly, I mean, y'all rebuilt a winning program.
Right. So then I was vacationing in Orange Beach with my family, and Coach Clark said, hey, we've reinstated the program. Come up here and let's talk. And so that next day I came up and sat down, and it was kind of like good news, bad news. The good news is the program has been reinstated. The bad news is we don't have any players. And then the next bad news is we're going to play right back in Conference USA FBS Division I competition the 2017 season. Well, it's 2015. That's 2 years. It sounds like a long time maybe to the normal person, but it's never been done in less than 5 years. Nobody's ever put together an entire Division I roster in less than 5 years. And we were being asked to do it in 2. So then that's kind of when the story really gets good in the book, is when we start, go out coast to coast recruiting and how we, brought these players in from all over the country and got it together. And then by the fall of 2017, we had a competitive team, won 8 games, went to the Bahamas Bowl, and, kind of shocked the world.
Coach, I love, how this story, although it's different, very different from the Marshall story that involved an incredible tragedy of losing almost an entire team in a plane crash. They also had to rebuild the program by going out and recruiting. And, I love the story in the movie, the way it's told. This program, of course, was ended and players dispersed, and you guys had to start with hardly nothing. What was the major thing that really made you guys successful in doing that? What was the focus, or what can you talk about that really, going not from the ashes to success, but going with nothing to success?
Well, I think truly, without trying to over spiritualize it, I mean, we literally start every staff meeting with prayer. Coach Clark does every morning. We have ever since that day after the program was reinstated. And so that's the first part. And then it's all about really personnel and players and finding those guys. And so we were a second chance program. And so you mentioned Marshall. There'd only been 2. You always in football, you go out and you study, how to somebody do something you want to do, whether it's running offense, defense, certain kinds of plays or whatever. Well, there really wasn't anybody to study that had lost all their players and brought it back, other than the Marshall situation. And then SMU had gotten the death penalty, back in the 80s. And so we looked at those 2, and both of them, the common denominator was they brought it back slow and used high school kids and took it on the chin. But like SMU took it on the chin for 30 years, and Marshall, got beat bad for a lot of years while they were trying to build it back up. Because of the circumstances with UAB, we didn't really have a chance. We didn't have 10 years to get the program back. We needed to get it back in a hurry. So the NCAA gave us some provisions where we could, since we had that 2 years window of opportunity, we could get some junior college players in with some academic standards that weren't quite as high as the other Division I programs, which meant because we had a year to actually tutor them and get their grades up. So we were able to get some guys in, not bad character guys, but maybe that were, had a bad English grade or something and needed a year to get stronger in certain skills. And anyway, so that's what we went with. We decided to go with the junior college route, not 100%, but with guys that were older that could come in and play, and transfer type guys. So that was the philosophy, and the NCAA gave us, and Conference USA gave us basically a year where we froze the clock, and the year that was there didn't count against those guys' eligibility. So we went out and found guys like that. There's 140 junior colleges, 70 in California and 70 in the rest of the country. And we went to those and found the players that were Division I high level guys, but maybe, had a little academic issue that we had to help them get fixed.
Well, I love that part of the story because, I'm constantly talking with people that they're working to write a book or they're looking to influence people. both ministry and in business. And many times people are having to start with nothing, or they're having to start over, or they're having to begin again. And I love that part of that story. And I think that this book could have a great influence on just people that are in leadership that are having to kind of venture into, okay, how do I start again? How do I rebuild this? And so I love that. I love also in the book the stories you tell. I can tell you're a storyteller, just like me. And Southern football, I understand. I was raised in the South, grew up in North Florida, in Tallahassee. So yes, I'm a Seminole, but I didn't grow up a Seminole. I grew up Alabama Roll Tide Bear Bryant fan. My dad and all of his family were from Alabama, and there was just a big following of all of my family of the Crimson Tide. And so I grew up, my favorite player was a guy named Johnny Musso, number 22, running back. Always wanted to be Johnny Musso. And I remember, we talked about this the other day that in the South, football is almost like religion. It's one of those things that, I can remember we played a joke on my dad and my uncles because they was watching the Iron Bowl at a family reunion, and they had everything set up, and my brother had gotten some kind of electronic something where we could interrupt the broadcast and speak over the broadcast. And so we hooked it up, and while the ball game was going on, we, hiding in another room, came over that mic and said, "We're sorry to announce, but today's Iron Bowl is not going to be broadcast." And my uncles and my dad, they about lost control.
I bet.
It's like, it was, we were just playing a joke, but we were told, don't ever do that again. Don't you ever mess up ball game when this is on. And so obviously, but I love the stories. If you love football and you love college football and you understand that aspect of it, I look back and I can remember, as I shared with you, one of the best periods of my life was when I was playing high school ball, and we'd go to my ball game. I'd go play my ball game on Friday night, and we had a very successful, my senior year, our small school, I'm kind of intrigued with those stories too. I love the movie Hoosiers, and you see all those people in those cars following the team and everything the night before, and people they lived for those games. Well, I grew up in a small county in North Florida, had one high school, 2A, and my senior year, we went on to win the state championship. And I've got pictures of my parents with things painted on the cars and all the different things that would go into that. But we'd go to, of course, my ball game was on Friday night. My brother, 4 years older than me, actually had gotten a scholarship to Georgia Tech. And Saturday morning, we'd get up and we'd make the drive to Atlanta. As I told you, we'd go to the varsity, eat a hot dog, and then we'd, go to the game, a lot of noon games. But there's a tradition that's built around that. And I love the stories you tell in here because I can relate to those stories. And two of the stories that really stood out to me that I wanted you just to share about, I really love the history of the story of the University of the South, or Sewanee University. And I especially love how you really highlighted Coach Bear Bryant and Coach Eddie Robinson. And so just, share a little bit about those two stories, whichever one you want to share the most of. I'd love to hear just kind of your personal take on those stories.
Yeah. Well, the Sewanee, like I told you we're in Tennessee. We drove up through Chattanooga today. We were probably 20 miles from Sewanee. It's beautiful down there. I've always been intrigued with that University of the South is the name of the school and everything. And then I found out about that story of the 1899 Ironmen, and they're doing a documentary on that. But I've known that story for a long time, and I just felt like that was really a heart of Southern football right there. So that's why I included that, and they actually called the documentary Unrivaled because they say that team there'll never be another team that goes and plays 5 games in 6 days, and then on the 7th day they rested, they say. But in those 5 days, they beat Texas A&M, Tulane, LSU, and Ole Miss in 6 days. They beat those 5 teams. So they call the documentary Unrivaled. So that, us being guys that like stories, I mean, it's hard to beat that one. I mean, we can't even make up a lie that would be that good. I mean, so I just always liked that. So I think that's why I included that, and a lot of the lessons to be learned in there. And then on the Bear Bryant and Eddie Robinson, those are kind of the 2 of the premier guys that really impacted a lot of folks, in their circles of influence, which were huge. And, each chapter has a scripture, and then at the beginning of it, and then at the end of it, it's got a coaching point. And kind of the coaching point of that particular chapter about those guys has to do with discipline, and I think that's kind of the big thing that those guys did, and that our society needs, that coaches do. And I think that's the reason we love coaches so much, is because they do instill that discipline that we all need growing up. And Tom Landry, there's a couple sayings I love. One of them, Tom Landry said that discipline is making men do what they don't want to do so that they'll be able to do what they've always wanted to do. That was his quote. And then Zig Ziglar said that if you discipline yourself to do the things you need to do when you need to do them, the day will come when you'll be able to do the things that you want to do when you want to do them. And but just stuff like that, we've heard a lot of things like that. You can have the pain of discipline or the pain of regret, but you're going to have one of them, And so those guys, Eddie Robinson, Bear Bryant, your high school coach, my high school coach, whoever, Bill Clark, whoever it is, instills those principles of discipline in multitudes of young men, and consequently enables them and us to be able to do things that we want to do because they taught us discipline. So I just kind of wanted to get that, and those 2 guys kind of, epitomize it in a lot of people's eyes. And everybody's got their favorite coaches, but a lot of people, think a lot of Bear Bryant and Eddie Robinson.
Yeah, I think Coach Bryant, had a major, influence. I love this movie Woodlawn that talks about, the influence of that coach at Woodlawn High School and those other coaches. And, I love, one of my favorite sayings of Bear Bryant is just him saying he loves the idea of molding men, and I think, today, I love, the Bible talks about that the hearts of the fathers turning toward the sons and the sons turning toward the fathers. And I love Coach Tony Dungy. I mean, he's one of my favorite leaders. He's another one of those key leaders. And you look and you say, what do we need more of in society? What do we need more of in business? What do we need more of in leadership? We need coaches. We need people that know how to come along people and develop them and bring the best out of them. And that's what many of these coaches did. Were they perfect? Absolutely not. There's only one that was perfect. And, my coach in high school really worked to develop me. When I coached football, many of the times the thing I enjoyed the most was helping a player to be able to accomplish something they were failing in, to be able to, give them a routine, or give them a training method, or give them something to do and see them actually do it. The look on their face when they made that block, the look on their face when they kicked that field goal, I mean, it's priceless. And so you can imagine, I imagine the influence of these people. These stories need to be remembered and retold, and many other stories need to be the same. And I think that's why it really, really hit me when I read that part, because I could immediately, attest to it. Bobby Bowden's another person that big fan of Coach Bowden and the influence that he had. And, many times in the spiritual world, I think I'm a pastor. I spent time teaching and preaching and all of that, but I don't think anybody has the influence that a coach has. And when you see these spiritual mentors that are leading in programs, both football, basketball, baseball, they have an incredible ability to influence, and that's one of the things I love. Talk about, I know there were some other parts of the book that really, and I want to go to chapter 33 and talk about that in just a minute, but I know there were some other parts that really stood out to you that are personal to you. Share about some of those other parts of the book that you'd like to share about for a moment, and then we'll talk about chapter 33.
Okay. Yeah. I poured so much into that book that it's hard to like pinpoint anything, one particular chapter, because but I do like the one, I think that's called Retaining the Dogs, is recruiting the dudes, retaining the dogs. And on that chapter, I went through and just kind of did a brain dump just about kids and their stories, just a one sentence about, where they came from and just a couple things about what it took for them to get to Birmingham and to be on the roster and to be one of the ones that ended up making the team. That one's special to me just because that's like I say, kind of the essence of it all. Who those players are, where they came from, what they've been through to get there. That's a big part of it, and really the whole UAB story. The big kind of underlying theme is really what football does. It's the one thing in the world that teaches young men, how to get up when you get knocked down. That's the biggest deal to me about football is when you get knocked down, you get back up and you go harder and you do things different, you do things better. And that's what the whole thing is really about, getting knocked down and getting back up. And that's what every one of those kids' stories is about in that particular chapter. So I like that one. And I really like the way we kind of put a bow on the end of it in the epilogue. I call it the Alpha and the Omega. There's two stories right there. The Alpha one is about and I won't tell the whole story so you got to read it, but these Marines were entertaining these big high military officials from Russia over here, and they took them to see a Friday night high school football game. And kind of the punchline at the end was when the Russian general saw all these Americans playing football under the lights on a Friday night. He said, do they do this everywhere? And the guy said, yeah, all across America, everywhere on Friday night, this is going on. And he said, well, we'll never be able to win a war against the United States then, and that was a great story. And then the I call it the Omega story was Abraham Lincoln. Bottom line, he just challenged the people he was around to not just get excited about information or a sermon or a coach's speech. If you don't do anything about it, it's useless. And so kind of a call to action thing is kind of how we end it off. And then I got a poem at the end of it. I really like the poem. I hadn't got a whole lot of feedback on that, but I wrote it. I kind of took it as an overview of the whole book to y'all do a poetry contest, and I was trying to get a free publishing package out of it, and I never did win, but I always liked the poem. I said, well, I spent so much time on this thing, I might as well put it in the book, and it kind of summarizes things, so I kind of like that too. So anyway, that's those are kind of my favorite, I guess, highlights there.
Yeah, I think your poem's great.
Well, thanks. You're the first one that said that. Good.
Absolutely. People, if you don't get this book for any other reason, you got to read the poetry of Randy Pippin.
Thank you, Don. That's straight from my poem.
No, I'm telling you, look, I love books. You can see some behind me here. I've got corners in my office with books stuffed into. I'm one of those people that I've ordered probably 5-6 books on Amazon during the last couple of months. Love books, but I've never seen a book that is set up the way that your book is. Want to kind of wrap this up, but I want to talk about chapter 33 because it really inspired me. And I know there's a lot that you were saying in there, but there's so many good things that can come out of sports. There's so many really good things that come out of sports. And that's what I love about this, because, I could share the research as well that talk about the areas that were depressed and youth had no future. And when they brought a sports program in, whether it be soccer, whatever it is, how things changed. I think there's so much that sports can bring in molding young men and women. And there's just so much benefit that I believe that it can bring to society when it's done well. When it's done with the type of leadership that we just talked about. But chapter 33, talks about, I love it, says, inside these lines, can we resolve social unrest? Talk about that chapter for a minute, Randy.
Well, and it kind of ends up being prophetic with what we got going on. But I kind of knew that there seems like there's always some kind of social unrest going on somewhere in the world. So I figured I'd be safe putting that in there. But the intro video in that chapter, which I want to touch on those videos real quick before we go. But that particular intro video, a very, very special soul brother of mine produced that video for the NFL. And it's really a powerful video. And so I just kind of took the principles there. And at the end of the day, we end that chapter with the song, Jesus is really the only answer. And so that's, how we kind of tied it together right there. At the end of the day, we're all, there's just one race. I believe that everybody came from Adam and Eve, and then there was a flood, and then everybody came off of Noah's boat. But, so we're literally all brothers and sisters that come from the same lineage. Some people just went different places, went north, south, east, and west, and maybe their complexion changed and their hair changed, but we still all came from the same, the same seeds and the same roots. And so I feel like, that at the end of the day, without Jesus, it ain't going to work no matter what. And with him, it will ultimately work. And so that's kind of the way we ended the book there, and as far as the chapter formats.
Yeah, I love that. And I totally agree. And I've seen that happen, not only in like movies like Woodlawn and, Remember the Titans. I mean, these are true stories. I think sports enables us to see beyond many of these things. And so I love the way the book ends. I love the whole flow of the book. You mentioned, and I want to make sure that I share this, that there's QR codes throughout the book that you're talking about easy. I had not done a lot of QR codes, but literally, like you talked about earlier, that the phones that we work with now are better than anything we've ever had before. And to take a picture, of the front of your book, where there's a QR code right there, immediately goes to a video. And throughout the book, there's videos that the QR codes lead to, and there's a lot of great music and songs. So it's almost like you thought out every chapter, and the chapters aren't real long either. It's almost like you're making a point, telling a story, sharing a couple of things, and then there's a QR code or a link that goes to a story and goes to a song. So I've never seen a book laid out this way, and I think it's very unique, and I think it is very special. So just share for a moment, Coach, what does the future look like for Randy Pippin? What's next? What do you see happening from here?
Yeah, well, I think, for the most part, I want to coach as long as it's realistic for me to be doing that. And we'll see how this book does. I think it's a good book, and like for it to, get into a lot of people's hands. And like Coach Clark said, if one person reads it and it helps them, then it's worth it, And then, it's such a great story. I would love to see the story turned to a movie. But we've said multiple times that, I mean, this is a better story than Remember the Titans or Hoosiers or Rudy or any of that stuff when you really dig into it. So I think that'd be great to see that happen. But I mean, I've been, coaching for 30 plus years, and at the end of the day, I love seeing the players get to the next level. And when I say next level, that doesn't mean the NFL, although that is the next level for some, but there's very few that do that. The next level of their maturity, their discipline, their academics, their family, all those kinds of things. That's what coaches do. You help people get to their next level or their new dimension. So just want to do that as long as I can, stay healthy, and see my own kids do well, and get married off and get me some grandkids, and then get them going in whatever areas that they're supposed to be going in. So that's those are kind of the things I want to do.
Well, I know that you're getting ready for the fall season. Players have started reporting and doing voluntary workouts, and I know what that routine is like, and so I'm excited about the book. I'm excited about the future of the book. We're going to share some things here as part of this show today on where people can go and find the book. But deep in the heart, you love Southern football. You love stories of hope, of resurgence and restoration. This is a great book. I couldn't recommend it any higher. And also going to share some things as well where you can find Coach Pippin, both on Twitter, also has a website. We will put a link up for that at the end of the show, and we'll give people information on how they can go and find the book. But you can go to Amazon, you can Google. The book is available everywhere that you can purchase a book online, also available in bookstores. If you go in, they can order it and request it if they're not carrying it. But Coach, I love your heart. I'm so glad we got connected last really over a year ago, and and seeing this process through. I'm excited about what the future holds. I'd love to see a movie talk about this story and share about that. We can't get enough of motivational movies that tell real stories that help encourage people. So I'm going to be believing and praying that the right people come into place to be able to do that. And I got to get to a ball game sometime. So
yes, sir. Absolutely. Yeah. Come see us play. And thank you so much, Don, for, you and your company. And yeah, last summer I took a day out of our family vacation and drove to Orlando, and that's probably the best decision I've made, certainly in the world of trying to get a book published, to come see you and your team. And y'all do such a fabulous job, and just really appreciate you really giving me this opportunity. I mean, you kind of walked me through it, and encouraged me and gave me practical tips, and just really appreciate you and your team for all you do to help guys, dysfunctional coaches and other people, be able to call themselves an author. Thank you.
You bet, Coach. I have a saying that you don't have to be a great writer to be a great author. Produce a book, somebody's got to live it, or they got to see it, and somebody's got to write it. And sometimes that's the same person. That's Max Lucado or others. But many times it's not. So you've lived the story, and you saw the story, and you worked with a couple of our editors and people, and you've put together something that will be around long after we're gone. And that's what I love and believe so much about in telling stories and in publishing things. So, Coach, thank you so much for being with me today, for being my very first guest to be interviewed on Living a Life Worth Remembering. You'll always be the marker of where I started in the interview phase of this.
That's scary. They say you only get one chance to make a first impression, and I don't know if you want to do that with me or not, but thank you for the the invite, and thank you for being such a good coach. You do a great job summing things up. And the one I remember is Burr, right? It's time to Burr. Buy it, read it, and recommend it. Isn't that what?
Absolutely.
Isn't that the way it goes?
Yeah, absolutely. That's all right. You want to be on Coach's team? In fact, I'll do it right now. If you want to be on Coach's team and help get the word out about this book, there's 3 things I'm telling you to do. I call it the Burr method, BRR. Buy a copy. Buy a copy. Go to Amazon today. Go wherever you can get a copy. Buy a copy. Or recommend this to others. You got somebody you know that needs to be encouraged, or you got somebody you know that loves college football, and they're going to love this. And then go online and review it. Go online, buy it on Amazon, go back and review it. It's a great book. Again, Coach, I can't thank you enough for being with me today and taking the time to do this. And you deserve to go get some tots from Sonic now. So
yes, sir. I'm going to do just that.
Absolutely. Well, Coach, thank you so much. And thank you for tuning in to Living a Life Worth Remembering today. I encourage you to share this with other people. You also, if you saw the link today, you can go and sign up to my YouTube channel at Coach Don Newman, or you can go to iTunes and actually sign up for Living a Life Worth Remembering. But I just want to encourage you to keep tuning in monthly as I share other stories of people that are making their mark, they're making a difference, and they're living a life worth remembering. And I'm praying for you that the ripples you create today will become the waves of the future. God bless each and every one of you. Thank you for tuning in.